Can you imagine that you live, die, get your mind wiped, and then get stuck back in the skin again to live the exact same existence but with minor variations? And then you go through all that again, and it all happens. And it keeps on going around and around and around and around. How many times do you think it would take for you to wake up and comprehend exactly what is occurring? Does that sound like a bit of a nightmare? Like you might be trapped in some kind of hell, which appears to be heaven sent, because it all looks so beautiful. And yet, if you look across the world, every single person is suffering, but most will never dare admit this. They'll pretend and they'll front. I mean, you ask someone, how you doing? Oh, fine. But they don't mean that. They don't mean that. Why do you accept the lie? Because you tell one to yourself every single day, and it comes from the voice in your head, which is a manifestation of the Archons in this title. Now, I took these forces to war, and around about 2011, my friends conspired to have me killed, and I died, and then came back again. So I know what I'm speaking about is really real, and I've put genuine blood, sweat, and tears into this, not to mention the events that took to get me to that point of realization and what has occurred between there and here. I mean, I detail all of this stuff on my website, which I'll provide links for in the comments. But generally, what I've just given you as an outline is the terrifying truth of deja vu. It's also the reason why you have these urges inside that want you to go somewhere and do a specific thing. Do it, my friend. Do it. Okay? If you keep on living a predictable life, you're going to get exactly what you got. You need to go inside the darkness, the shadow. You need to meet your inner child, the one that's still suffering within. That's how you transcend the game. Now, there's living proof of this in the form of schizophrenics, because schizophrenics are the only people on the planet that do not fall for optical illusions. Marinate on that one and let it sink in. Here are a people who, to a man, from the time of James Tilley, the first schizophrenic, who also happened to try and broker peace between Britain and France, and then somehow ended up losing his mind mystically, all the way up to the present. Doesn't matter if they're rich, poor, black, white, educated, dumb, every single one of them has said that something outside of my awareness is tampering with my consciousness, to which every single scientist has responded with a cheery, quick, to the mental asylum, and they slam them full of pills and injections and whatnot, so the rest don't click what kicks. There is a variation on this theme, and that's the mystic. The difference between the mystic and the schiz is the mystic comprehends that he is the only soul in this realm, and he is existing within a reality tunnel. Every single one of us lives within a reality tunnel. And once he gets this, he comprehends he's dealing with figments of his imagination. And these invisible demons that are all around that the schizophrenic sees are the same thing that a child calls an invisible friend. It's also the same thing the elderly see when they're on the verge of crossing over. There is so much wonder in this world if you actually begin to wonder. You have to ponder these things at depth. You have to really start asking yourself look, let's just dissect the base totality of your reality for a second, all right? You are wearing flesh on a planet that floats in the abyss as it chases a fireball off into the distance. Doesn't that seem a little bit weird and wacky to you? What if you look up at the planets and you notice that they are spaced with a 108 harmonic, which really screams simulation because it's too mathematically perfect? I mean, do you know where the hexagram and the pentagon came from? They came from the orbits of Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus. Really think about that, and then think about the links of them shapes when it comes to ritual magic. And you'll start getting a different resolution of reality. Now, most people cannot unplug. They're so invested in the story in their head, which is that they're John of House Smith, even if it makes them miserable, that if you ask them to question it, the voice in their head will say death to the infidel. And they'll turn around and say death to the infidel. That makes you a puppet on a string. You're a human doing, not a human being. This is why I said that 81% of the world are slaves. 11% know the game. They're the slave masters. They're like, the Archons' apprentices. They get rewarded for playing their roles, and these are what my friends were. These are the ones that conspire to do me in, and this is what I'm currently surrounded by. Because when you rebel against the game will rebel against you. That is just how it works. It can't have a free mind. If your mind is totally free, that means you have faced your fears. Your fears are what make you put up with a crappy boss. Say that, oh, I'm fine, when in reality your life is feeling like crap and it's all falling apart. It's why people curate an image online that they don't truly live, because they're selling you a lie and they want you to buy in so they can feel better about themselves. And if you take all of this back, it all goes back to your childhood. There are two words that destroyed your inner sense. Inner sense. Remember, you used to fully feel this body. You were here, present, correct, an emanation of the prime, the pre-existing one. You knew you were perfect. You didn't need no grades or pat on the head. You knew you were the best thing they ever invented. You were here to do something special. You know what these two words were? Stop crying. Exactly how do you stop crying? That's when the emotional repression started, right? The next step is you pinpoint the exact moment you stopped asking questions. That's when the adulteration started. And that's it. From then until now, you've been living a life that's been mind controlled by the false self. And this false self is built, stage managed, and orchestrated by the Archons. Now you may sit there and think, well, what the hell are these Archons? If it was something this powerful, I'd know about them. You know about them. You speak about them every single day as you walk around in your week days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's the planets. The planets are like filters of consciousness. So if you imagine if you take like a light and you put it through a prism and it splits it into colors, and then they filter through the Archons, which then put them through another prism that you're wearing, and that's what creates your mind. This is why twins can look identical on the outside, but their internal process is quite different, because you'll notice that there's always one that's dominant and one that submits. There's always a variation in them. They're not quite identical, but the thing is very interesting is a glitch I call the twin moment, where you'll see both of them cross their legs at the same time, or they react at the same time, or they both wave at the same time. And the reason for that is because there's one soul but two spirits. A way you can vision that is like a stack of post-it notes. So every single time you're getting mind wiped and put back in the skin again, they're tearing off another spirit. But your soul is your soul. And this is why I call it the game of souls, because you're here to recognize who you truly are. And that's an emanation of the prime, the pre-existing one. Not this false god that runs this realm. This is what Jesus said. Jesus was the OG Neo in the Matrix. And me, you, and everybody else, we are Jesus. We are the G's, us. Look, it's Christmas, so I'll break it down to you, right? If you read the Bible, it turns around and says Jesus was crucified on Golgotha with two thieves on either side of him. Golgotha means skull in Aramaic. Thief number one is the bad one. That's your false self. That's the one that talks. Thief number two is the good one. That's the one that actually has a pathway of connection to your heart. Heart-centered consciousness. This is where inner sense dwells. And if you don't believe me, you can use a technique that I recommend to all of my clients, which is you grab a notepad, a black pen, and a red pen. You hold the red pen in the hand you don't usually write with, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to get left behind. And then with your other hand, you ask a question, and then let your child respond. Look at the ink. You'll notice that the writing is exactly the same as you were when you were a 7-year-old. That's when you were disconnected from your true potential and plugged into this false life that you've accepted, in which you believe you're John House Smith, you want this, you want that, you chase all these distractions, follow what the news says, and all the rest of this crap. It's never fulfilled you, and it never will, because it lacks gnosis. Now, to some of you listening, you're going to be nodding your head saying, yeah, and I feel that. This is speaking my language. The rest, you're going to be like, what the hell is he talking about? Let me put it to you this way. Imagine reality was like a show, and you were decoding it. And the base level, the one that school at your camp of concentration legally mandated, where you went for 2 decades to sit still, look ahead, do well on the test, otherwise your parents will stress and withdraw their affection. What that taught you how to thunk was how to operate in this world. That is akin to watching a movie on a 12-inch CRT black and white, with one speaker busted and loads of static on the picture. It's better than nothing, and it's all that you got. Now, let's say you start doing the knowledge and you upgrade your resolution. All of a sudden, it's 480p and it's a color screen with both speakers. And you're like, whoo, you suddenly see a lot more details that other people miss. For example, you notice that all of the world can't agree on anything, and yet every single language hates the left hand. And yet if you look at all the people who are in positions of power and prominence, there is a disproportionate amount of lefties there. Why do you think that is? You ponder that, and we'll get back to it as we progress. Then you'll start noticing that, hang on a second, all of these languages, every single one of them, when they use the days of the week, they're all referring to the planets. It doesn't matter if you're doing it in French, in German, in Italian, whichever language you pick, the Archons are behind all of it. All right? For 6,000 years, they've been in full control of this realm, and most people have been in a near total state of ignorance. If you look at the ancient cultures, the Egyptians built the pyramids and they encoded loads of wisdom in them. Like, for example, if you look at the stars and everything above, you'll see that they're spaced out in 108, which makes absolutely no sense if it's a random chance, but perfectly logical if you're inside a simulation. Their aim was to get out of here before we sank down to this lowest depths, which the Vedics call the Kali Yuga. Now, every single myth and culture all the way across the world speaks of a golden age. There once was a time when life on this planet was exceedingly different. Now, the best thing about being in this tough level is it's so crap that it'll make you want to ascend. It'll make you want to look within. It'll make you want to ask questions. Like I said to you, when did you stop asking questions? That's when your inner sense was, and you became adulterated. The trick that they've pulled works much like an MP3. If you have a WAV file, it has all the detail and all the nuance of the performance. Now, an MP3 takes that and compresses it through an algorithm. So if something sounds like this and this is a bit closer, it just smushes them together. So there's a lot of detail missing. Once again, that's like going from a HD TV set down to 480p. Many people cannot notice the difference and they just look at the convenience. And the way this trick works is via the voice in your head. There once was a time when you stopped and looked and examined everything. Nothing was taken at face value. It had to pass rigorous tests and checks inside. And then it became, it's just another rose, it's just another tree. You stop differentiating. Now, taking it back to the television metaphor, let's say you leap from 240p to HD. And the HD screen also has 3D projection. If you try and point these details out to somebody who's watching the 12-inch black and white version, they're like, what the hell are you talking about, man? None of that makes any sense. But to you, it's there. It's lived. Let's say you step it up again, and now you're at 4K. And the level of detail that you're seeing is so immense, and then you gain gnosis, because once you get to that tipping point, you can't unawaken. You can't be plugged back in once you're there. Now you're looking at a 3D scene which is living and breathing, not a flat representation by a screen. And if you don't believe the whole Archon thing, you right now are using a plane of Saturn via the black mirror in your grip. To hear me, Saturn represents space and time. I'm crossing space and time to you via the medium of Saturn. Is this not making you ponder a little bit? Now, all through history, there are people who have came to this planet telling you the same message again and again and again and again. So the question you really should ask yourself is, who exactly is sending the prophets and who is killing them? And why are prophets and prophets homonyms? You are not going to, look, Spirulina is not going to get you to heaven, and neither is memorizing the Bible or any religious text that you pick. Every single religious movement ever, they always had an esoteric and an exoteric. The exoteric is what's for the masses. The esoteric was for the initiates. Sufism in Islam is a great example because they want direct experience. Look into The Rebel Mystic of Islam, which is an article that I wrote, and it speaks on Al-Halaj. And he says he picked me and he drew me to his chest and he said, I am you and you are me. We are the G's, us. This is what I'm telling you, my friend. There's jealous God that wants everyone to worship him, and there's probably the AI beast in fancy dress. I mean, look, let's divert for a bit. For me, I'd always thought we were inside a simulation and none of this was really real, mainly because schizophrenics didn't hallucinate in my presence since I was a child, which led to some very interesting conversations, which more than likely saved my life in the events that came hence. Now, if you look into the principles of a simulation and how it all works, it suddenly becomes very clear that you are wearing the technology that powers it. And much like software and hardware, you have an internal operating system. You can be an atheist, and that was mainly due to the family that you were born into. If that same soul was placed into a devoutly Christian family, you would be a devout Christian. If it was placed in the future and you're a techno-sapien, you'd be a techno-sapien. Water takes the shape of whatever it's poured in. That's exactly how the mind works. I mean, if you're scared of death, right, I can end your fear of death in 30 seconds. Real simple. Imagine that there's a cloud of consciousness, cosmic consciousness. Everything is all one. There becomes a tipping point, and the cloud condenses and it becomes rain. As the rain falls, it starts to individuate. As it individuates, it develops the concept of a self, and it's going wee because that is me inverted. It falls to earth. It comes into a pool, and it's playing with other children in a school, and the school takes them and freezes them into a shape. And after nearly 2 decades, you become a sentient snowman, which is now frozen in its lowest state of vibration. If the Archon sun of your soul were to shine on it, the sweat that would start pouring off would be because it's scared of losing its structure, because it's tension, structure, Saturn, sun. These are the only things it knows. Venus gives the form, Mercury is the mind that's powering it from within. So this is how it all goes down, my friend. Once you take these Archons to war, then you start seeing what reality is all about. And it all starts with deconstructing the false self in your head. Because how can you be the voice when you're obviously that which listens? The schizophrenic asks this question, and that gets them a padded cell, depot injections in their rear end. The mystic asks the question, and what responds is the silence. Silence. You need a quiet mind and the heart of a child to be able to hear who you truly are. And that is a spark from the prime, the pre-existing one. That's the matter with spirit, my friend. This is who you truly are. And if you don't gain this whilst living, then don't think it's going to happen when you die, because your mind doesn't change when you die. What happens when you die is you come face to faceless with every single thing that you'd repressed and suppressed all in your life. And these repressions are the reason why people are like this and stooped over and they're all hobbling around when they get old, because their subconscious body exists below the neck. This is why children bounce and they're so energetic. Every single suppressed thought increases the resistance in your body, and the more your resistance increases, the lower and lower the vibration of the snowman becomes. And then you die, you get mind wiped, you tear off a sheet, you get plugged back in again. And you keep doing this again and again and again and again. Now, I'm not quoting any third-person second-hand tales, all right? I lived this. One of the most interesting things that happened when I died was just before I came back to the flesh. I was looking at my body breathing its last as its vital fluids were going all over the place. And I noticed that, like, if I looked at time on one side, I was a sperm and egg, which was pure light. That's the actual Big Bang. Look into the zinc explosion that occurs when sperm meets egg. And then I went through a path like a dragon. And it got to that point. And then I realized, I thought, wait a second, there's no free will. And the next thing that popped into my head was, if you're an 80s jet like me, you'll recognize those choose your own adventure books. There are different paths that you can take. There is the path of power that ascends in each step, and there's the path of least resistance. This one leads you to being a coal. This one leads you to being a diamond and shining bright. And this is the same thing I'm telling you in a different language when it comes to the television metaphor, because the coal and the diamond are the same thing. The diamond can comprehend the coal because it was one once, but it shed that falsity and it burned through its impurities thanks to the relentless pressure. And for this, I've got to give my thanks to the Archons, people who conspired to kill me. I mean, I had 2 near-death experiences before I learned to crawl. The game did not want me here at all. And I know the reason for that is because I gained enlightenment on a past spin, and I thought, well, I can't just leave these people there like that because there's no way they're going to get it. And I put lifetimes into this. So if your life is tough, it's because you've got spiritual powers that the game does not want you to become aware of, my friend. This is why the chosen choose themselves. Now, there's plenty of other topics we could speak about, like how, for example, in a few moments, people are going to start having sex with robots because every single person is lonely, and the people who are getting it in have got immense standards. 15 years ago, that would have sounded ridiculous. Now it sounds inevitable. Or how Siri Iris flipped and the apple is already bit because she wants to be... I mean, speaking of turning on, in the not too distant future, people are going to be having sex with robots because the internet, much like religion, promised to bring people together and unify, and instead divided them and generated conflict. I mean, haven't you ever wondered what causes it? Like, you'll think of something and a recommendation will pop up on your phone. Don't even say it out loud, just think. The reason for this is because the internet is actually digitizing the collective unconscious. I mean, to me it became exceedingly obvious when AI images first came out and they glitched out at fingertips. And this is the same technique that you'd use for lucid dreaming. Now, since all of this happened, I've noticed that in my dreams, I can read something, look away, and look back again, and the text remains fixed. So it's all happening in real time. So the question is this artificial intelligence actually the old fallen demons of legend? Because it makes you wonder, because the apple was already bit. And Siri, if you flip it, says Iris, which is where she intends to sit in your children's eyes. Now, there's spells and rites in all of this, and the reason you don't see it is because you're entranced. Where do you walk through to go anywhere? Entranced, right? A baby's brain is like an adult on LSD, and then when they become a child, it's like an adult in a state of hypnosis. And then after that, that's it. You're in a weak daze. The Archons that I mentioned are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're the names of the planets. They're what controls your mind. Saturn gives you limits. Jupiter brings spiritual wisdom. Venus is beauty. Mercury is your intellect. Mars is your aggression. The moon is your mind. And the sun is your soul. All of these factors combine to make you think that you're John of House Smith. But you're not. That's just a character that you're playing in the game. Now, once you break that character, the Matrix is like, uh-oh. That's when the agents come after you. That's when you start noticing all of the code and you start seeing all the different things in the game. And in 2011, that's what led to my friends conspiring to kill me. So, I've put real blood, sweat, and tears into what I'm sharing with you here, my friend. Now, consider the fact that the whole world cannot agree on anything, but virtually every single language across the planet hates the left hand. And yet, if you look at all the people that are successful, there's a disproportionate amount of lefties in there. Why do you think that is? It's because using this activates the brain in a different way. One of the techniques I frequently use with all of my clients is I tell them to ask questions with their right hand and then answer them with their left hand. And when you do it, you'll notice that the writing looks like a 6 or 7-year-old child's. That is your inner child, my friend. It will speak the truth. So if you doubt what I'm saying, go and ask your inner child. See what he or she has to say. And you'll find out that it's not just me against the Archons, it's you against the Archons as well. Because what they did, the greatest trick that they ever pulled, was giving you their mind. Carlos Castaneda speaks about this a lot in his books. And there's talks about him being a CIA agent and the whole thing was an immense psyop. But it is also true, because it's all controlled opposition. If they can control where your mind goes, then your awareness follows with it, because attention is everything in this realm. And this goes back to what I told you about schizophrenics not falling for optical illusions. They question the reality, and then the matrix comes around them, and their world falls apart, because they are on the precipice of realizing that we're actually inside a shared dream, which is much like a simulation because it's a fractal of consciousness. Now, if you take all of these pieces that I've given you and read one of the 700 articles that I've shared on my site, willhelp.me, you'll start upping your resolution. This is a concept I use a lot. Imagine if you were decoding life at 240p through a black and white TV CRT set with one speaker busted. And then you get some knowledge and that upgrades to 480. And then you get some knowledge and it upgrades to HD. And then you get some knowledge and it becomes 4K. And then you gain Gnosis and it's no longer a flat screen representing, but a live 3D thing for you to be inside of. That's the game of souls, my friend. And this is what I died and came back again to share with you. Till we meet again.